7 o'clock. Today's Tuesday, October 19th, 2021. The time being 7 p.m. The meeting of the Board of Zoning and Appeals is called to order. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. To comply with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the city requests that participants in this meeting complete a voluntary anonymous survey that is available on the table in the back of the room. At this time, would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John, would you call roll, please?
Roy,
Present.
Matt,
Here.
Phil,
Here.
Roy. Alan.
Here.
Approval of last month's meetings. I was not present, so I'm going to let Roy take care of that.
Okay. I'll entertain, you all should have received a copy of the minutes, either via email or in person. Is there any corrections that anybody notices? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion that we approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Second.
So moved. Okay, Phil made it, John and Alan seconded it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, it's passed.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right. No old business to attend to. New business. First order would be Shari Blackburn seeking a special exception for a home business at 1404 Northeast Street. Shari, could you come forward, please, to the podium? State your name and address for the recording, please, and let us know what you got going on.
Shari Blackburn, 1404 Northeast Street, Greensburg, Indiana. I just want to put a one chair operation in one room of my house for a part-time beautician chair.
Sarah, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, if I can say, so Shari at 1404 Northeast Street, she rents that, but she has gotten approval from the property owner to ask for the special exception. I believe Shari, when she shared with me, it would just be for a couple days a week.
Right.
And she has ample parking. Be one customer at a time. There may be a lap over if somebody shows up before she's done with somebody else. But I received an email from a Mr. Davis that lives by Shari, and he is fine with that. Yesterday I received a phone call from another neighbor inquiring what the letter was exactly about that she received, and I explained to her, and she said that she had no problems with it at all.
Ron, since she rents the property, I assume it's only for her while she's the renter.
I believe in the past it's been interpreted that home occupation special exceptions are only for that occupation / individual, doesn't transfer.
I believe it is non-transferable is the way we've always interpreted it in the past. And it's not transferable to a different type of business. So she couldn't come in and ask for a variance to do a beautician place and then suddenly change over to dog washing.
Sure.
So
And it has to be home occupation, so she couldn't hire an employee under this special exception.
correct.
And the other piece of all of that, historically, you have granted these on, shall we call it, a probationary basis for 1 year.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that exception.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or concerns on this matter? Any other members of the board have any questions, concerns for Shari?
Does the motion need to contain any of that language, or is that all implied?
No, I think it's implied in a use, this type of home occupation use variance.
Including the 1-year probation? Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, are you ready for a motion? I'd make a motion, we go ahead and approve.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Yeah. Roy seconded.
Roy,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Ellen.
Yes.
You're all set? Thank you, Shari.
Thank you very much.
Next order of business, Kyle and Lindsay Klene, variance for a parking lot at 1436 North Liberty Circle Drive West. If someone could come forward, please. State your name, address at the podium for recording.
My name is Kyle Klene. The address in question is 1436 North Liberty Circle Drive West. We are seeking.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Could you please spell your last name just because it's.
Klene, Klene.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. We are seeking a variance for the parking lot at that address. It's supposed to be a paid parking lot. It is on a commercial lot, but we are just using it for personal storage. It won't be a storefront or anything like that, so it's just being used for personal matters. And right now, we'll have a gravel parking lot, so.
Sarah, do you have anything to add on this one?
Not in particularly, I know that they use it for personal business that they have, and I know our ordinance requires paved curb parking lots. So he pretty much shared all the information that I have as well.
And have you heard from any neighbors or?
No, I did not have any response from anyone in the letters that were sent out.
Okay.
Do you own that building?
Yes.
You know, I assume we can make a motion that would, or that it stays, you know, just with this particular business, if they change the business or added any kind of.
That's what I was trying to think, is whether or not the variance would run with the property such that if they were to sell it, whether you would.
It's, in the past, it's always stayed with the property.
Yeah, it's always ran with the property, which
Right.
means the variance, if they were to sell it to someone who wanted to use it for a commercial business, there's a possibility that that variance would go with it.
Yeah, we need to stipulate that probably, that it's,
I was gonna say, can you stipulate it if it gets changed to a storefront or anything else that it has to?
Yes, I think you could stipulate that you're approving the variance with the agreed stipulation that if it becomes a commercial business or changes hands, that the variance does not run with the property. Pretty sure you can do that.
So if I can bring something up just real quick, we've had some issues out in that area of, regarding parking lots. This is just information for the board. There are some parking lots out there that did not, for whatever reason in the past, follow the ordinance that are businesses and did not have their lots paved or curbed. in most recent time, most recent building out there, they were told that they have to pave and curb their parking lot. Again, this is information for you all to have on the board only. So just keep that in mind when you do make your decision on this.
Sarah, what's the business that was required to pave?
The most recent business was the Daisy Autism Center.
Yeah, and I can inform the board, this has come up because it is zoned I-2, I-1?
I-1.
So it is zoned I-1, there's a lot of commercial business out there, and by our ordinance, commercial businesses have to comply with ADA requirements, and they have to have paved and curbed lots. For a long time, there was enforcement might have been an issue under prior administrations, or whatever you wanna call it. But Ron and Sarah have both taken a very reasonable position, in my legal opinion, of this is what the ordinance says, you have to comply with it. If you can't comply with it or have a reason why you shouldn't comply with it, the appropriate mechanism is to do what this gentleman has done, which is come before you all and ask for a variance from that ordinance. To my knowledge, none of the commercial business owners out there have done so in terms of coming before this body and asking for a variance. Am I wrong on that, Sarah?
No, you're correct.
Okay.
Actually, I believe Daisy asked for a variance on the curbing,
Daisy did.
Yeah.
and I don't remember where that ended. I think you all required it for that.
It was before me, I think.
You remember saying,
It
That
was
was
before me
before me
too.
as well.
Roy, you were here at the
Yeah,
time.
we required, I think we did give them some leeway on one side or something, maybe, but we required,
And to clarify a bit, the zoning ordinance requires all parking and driveways to be hard surfaced, regardless of use. And curbed. However, the ordinance provides relief from the curbing requirement for residential property.
So, I think if you were so inclined to make the distinction here that this is a non-commercial use and it is not being extended to a commercial use, that would be a distinction that you could make.
So do you operate a business out of there?
We just store product there, so I don't like actually run a business. I mean, I sell online, so the product from there, is where it's located.
So you take deliveries there?
I can, yes. I haven't yet, no.
That's where my concern lies, so.
What do you mean by what do you mean?
Well,
Just the like trucks coming up and.
sure. I mean, it's to being a commercial business and a commercial, zoned commercial, and that's, what the ordinance states for a business. So whether you sell online or whether you sell, I don't know that particularly matters.
I believe, if I can say something, one more thing here, sorry. I believe when I spoke with Kyle at one time, not knowing what would happen tonight, I did stress to him that in the entrance to the lot would need to have some sort of hard material because of the ditch right along there. But that was just based on, what happened this evening. I stressed that would be important, so that didn't break down.
I think we should stipulate that also, if you're inclined to consider the variance, I think we should require the entrance to have some type of, I don't wanna say concrete or asphalt, I don't know that, but some type of hardened surface, and the exclusion that can't run a business out of, that we'd be within the right on that, correct, Chris?
I think if you wanted to add that, certainly. So then that raises an interesting question. If you're storing product that you sell online, that's not personal use to me. It's product that you acquired for purposes of selling online, correct? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay, so,
but it's not like a top flight where we have customers coming in and out. I mean, I would see that as being my biggest issue, if you know, for being at fault for something happening. But we are literally the only two that would be, you know, if we did have deliveries, that would be something else too. But we would be the only two coming and going from that place as far as that's concerned. I mean, it's not like a storefront where we have customers come up, you know, every 10 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, that's the whole purpose for me.
so really that was the distinction you're making, is you don't really have people other
Yeah,
than you
right,
to go
exactly,
there.
right.
My only concern is if you're going to get into a nuanced variance, then you have to give specific definitions of what exactly that means, and does what he's talking about constitute commercial? To me, the legal definition of commercial is you are buying or selling a good or service, and you are receiving money from that sale or, you know, process. Whether it's those two people individually or 100 people, it's still commercial. So I just don't want to put him in a position where you give him a variance that 2 days down the road, Ron and Sarah can walk up and go, well, you're selling stuff out of here, that's clearly commercial. And then if you're getting down into the weeds of, okay, commercial is fine if you're doing this, this, and this, but you're not doing this, that, and the other, then that becomes a very difficult to enforce variance. But those are my concerns from the legality of it.
Yeah, I think one of my concerns would be like with Top Flight, they have a full parking lot and they're not paved at all. So they have people coming and going left and right. You know, and this is something that we're just doing without a storefront, and you know, that's just kind of the point that I'd look at it as well.
You know, I don't know if Top Flight is supposed to be doing that. think
Right,
they
I mean,
might-
that's what
I
I'm
think they very well may be some of the businesses Sarah was referencing,
Mhm.
so. So either way, whether you get it or not, I commend you for coming in and asking for it.
Does anyone else in the audience have anything to say on this matter?
And if I can say one other thing.
Sure.
You know, if this would be like a warehouse, like Amazon or something along that line, we would make them pave it. I'm not a voting member, of course, but I just feel that we're setting a precedence and we're trying to get that to be cleaned up out there as much as we can. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Sarah, I apologize, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but which precedent, which precedent are you wanting to
So-
set in your role?
You know, what the ordinance states, you know, it needs to be paved and curbed. Previous administration has let some people get by with it for whatever reason, I cannot say. And, the ordinance was not followed. The most recent place out there, they were made to pave it. I just think that, down the road, if we get more people to build out there and they look around and see some lots aren't paved, some lots are, we need to kind of set the precedence that we're not gonna allow that to happen anymore. I understand that this is a personal type warehouse, but I have to agree, kind of with Matt as far as, it is a business, he is making money from it, that kind of thing. And I tend to get a little concerned with if he would sell that place down the road, then, how are we gonna go after the new people to get them to pave the lot? That's my concern with that as well. Does that make sense, or?
Well, it does, and since I was the one that asked, I guess I'll clarify my purpose for the question, because I kind of see as sitting here two potential precedent that the board could be setting. One is we're going to strictly adhere to our ordinance as it relates to out in that area, and we're gonna have everybody pave it. In which case, the top flights of the world will be coming in here, and if they come in here, they will get the same treatment as this gentleman. And then at the end of it, all those are paved and there's no issue and everybody's complied with their ordinance, or they've found a way to get the ordinance changed. That's one precedent that could be set. Another precedent would be that if you're not going to pave it, then the process is you do what this gentleman did and you come in and you ask for a variance and you put your case and you let this board decide, and it's on a case-by-case basis, which then also puts I keep using Top Flight, but that's just because that's the one he mentioned, and I know they have a gravel lot, but you put all of those businesses out there on notice that this is something that we are now enforcing, this is something that this administration takes seriously, it's something that this board takes seriously, and if you want the variance, you need to come ask us and explain why and what justifies it. Those are the two precedent that I see potentially being set in this particular issue. And for Mr. Klein, unfortunately, he's the guy that was the first one to come in and ask for it out there, so he gets to be the guinea pig for what you guys are looking for. But Sarah, did I state those two potentials accurately?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, accurate, yes, thank you.
Sarah, or maybe Ron, is it a safety issue or is it appearance? Like what it looks like, you wanna keep it consistent, you wanna keep it professional looking, or is it just, resident safety,
I
citizen
think the
safety?
general answer is that we have zoning ordinances for consistency and appearances within given neighborhoods.
Right.
There is a safety issue. If you have an aggregate driveway on a paved road, you end up with stone kicking out on the road and being a nuisance in that regard. I suppose theoretically could reduce traction, having that stone on the road. There is, I don't really want to say environmental issues, but you're going to have dust and that dust is going to get spread not only over that subdivision, but there's the adjoining residential subdivision across the street. So I think those are the reasons that it's done this way, why the ordinance is written this way.
There's also an ADA compliance component to some of that, isn't there?
ADA requires accessible parking and accessible routes to the property. And that route has to be firm and, I forget the term they use, but it has to be firm and tractionable. I don't think that's a word, but you gotta be able to walk on it without stumbling, maybe push someone in a wheelchair. Those are a part of the ADA issue.
Is that compliance based on our zoning? That's not.
It's based on federal statute.
Right, but it's not ordinance, it's not.
No, the ADA component comes from
Because it is that.
federal statute and guidance issued by the Department of Justice.
Does anyone else from the audience have anything else to add? Sure. Could you come forward, please? State your name and address for the podium.
Lindsay Klene, 1416 West Springfield Street, Greensburg. I'm with Kyle. This is our building. I was just going to mention that if it's between not being a commercial building and having and not paving it, we need it to be a commercial building. That's the whole point of going to the industrial parkway, is to have it a commercial building, basically, to be able to have it a business. No, we don't have a storefront, we don't have people coming to buy from the business, but it still needs to be a business so that we don't get in that, like, you know, issue of, well, you're running a business from a non-business place. So that's the whole purpose of us moving it from our place to this building.
Yeah,
so.
we were approached by Sarah last year, and she told us not to do this out of our home.
Yeah.
So we moved it. We bought land, we bought a lot, we built this building just for this purpose because we were told by the city not to.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't want it. We don't want to. We put it in a commercial area for a reason. So we don't want that to
I mean,
be
if we didn't
a stipulation. We would rather pave it than, you know, it not be a commercial place. That was the whole point of buying it where we did. So
Yeah, so
That's
we,
all I
I mean,
wanted
we
to
were
say.
trying to comply initially with, you know, the city and state or what.
and they
Whatever
did when they
laws and-
put the gravel in. They did do a culvert.
Yeah, they culvert
So,
over the,
yeah.
so it's
So the,
structurally sound.
Yeah. So the ditchway does have a firm foundation under it. That's all I want to say. Do I need to say it?
I might attempt to clarify that the ordinance requires paving regardless of land use.
Right. It does, yeah.
And we have no land use classification of personal.
Right.
It's either residential or business or industrial.
Right. I agree, he's right, he does say that, so.
Does anyone from the board have anything else to add?
That's a very small parking / driveway anyway, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, I was out by there today and
Yeah.
I just glanced at it, it wasn't huge at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not top flight size,
No, Top Flight's like 3 times
they're, yeah.
built the building and everything, so.
Anybody else have anything to add? Ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance based on the conditions that we discussed earlier, that this is not to be a storefront, is for persons or storage only, and that we get someone out there that knows enough about the culvert to make sure that it's not gonna collapse. If a professional's competent in it, I'm competent, okay? That good, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my motion.
I mean, you could ask the city engineer to make an analysis of the culvert.
All right,
Roy, you talked earlier about paving the entrance.
Yeah.
Is that a part of your motion?
well, make sure that it's secure, I don't know if it's paved or if they have a culvert under the stone that you're confident is not gonna collapse when you drive across it with my bicycle. You know, I'm fully confident in that. It doesn't have to be paved, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
If you're,
I was
again, I
only
want
going to
I
ask
don't want
if
it
you're
to collapse.
requiring pavement,
Not
how much?
not in the, not in my.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that if I may clarify just the motion that you are making is a motion to approve the variance with the following stipulations: that the building and property not be used as a storefront, be used for storage only, and that the city engineer approve the entrance to ensure its security and safety, and that if he signs off on the entrance, then you're good.
Correct.
Okay. So that's your motion.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Roy,
No,
Matt,
No.
Bill,
No.
Alan?
No.
Sorry,
Sorry, bud.
I'm gonna have it paid.
I'm just gonna make it really easy to do a top 5K. You gotta pay the thing now.
That's what I wanna do.
Yeah.
I wanna set the precedent that we're going after the other people.
Yep.
Final order of business for this evening, Evan and Emily Manship, variance for parking at 206 Southeast Street. If you could come to the podium and state your name and address, please.
Well, you don't mind if I hand out my pretty piece of paper
Please do.
before?
I don't need one. I say the environment. I'll just look at Phil's.
Yeah.
Well, I'll left a couple extra copies up here for the record as well. Who am I talking to, by the way? This? You?
Them.
No?
Yeah.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Evan Manship. My address is 2001 East 52nd Street, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46205. I'm here today to ask for the formal approval of our variance for the redevelopment of the old St. Mary's Catholic Church located at 206 South East Street. Last spoke with everyone in April, I believe April or May. In our last meeting, I guess a lot's changed since then. I'm a daddy. My beautiful wife Emily's out there with my daughter, so we're just saying Elizabeth. We've spent, actually, I guess the rectory, just due north of the subject properties, traded hands to the Mobleys here, who joined us today, Dan and Debbie. And lastly, we spent an exorbitant amount of time with our design team, really trying to make a super convoluted site and project less confusing. So what seems pretty rudimentary when you look at kind of the before and after what's being proposed, it's kind of funny to kind of reflect on because a lot of time and effort went into really making a difficult decision. But based on the feedback we heard from the board and the building commissioner last time, we are essentially proposing to demolish or the full scrape of the old St. Mary's School in an effort for a green space in lieu of the church. I'm sorry, the school. The school is 33,000 square feet, give and take, and I think the board's confusion with the previous vote was how are we going to control what's going to be done with the property, whether there's going to be any development with it, and the answer is no. And this proposal is to show exactly that. Nothing will be done with the church or with the school because the school will not exist. So on the first page, you'll see the full proposal, which includes the school as it sits, that's now being converted into full formal green space, pictures, gathering, just a pretty little spot to entryway into the event center. Nothing commercial in use, nothing gathering in use. It's literally just green space, a patch of grass. Secondly, you'll note that we're able to accommodate parking for this space as well, should the board deem it necessary. We are going to seek formal approval for a variance of 12 parking spaces that were short. But again, as a worst case scenario, we are able to accommodate all required parking on site privately so that this variance isn't even necessary. Again, that's our worst case scenario, but we are here to request the formal approval of a 12 parking space variance to accommodate this project so we can have essentially a bigger green space for folks to enjoy. Anyway, you'll see the site plan as proposed is a worst case scenario that includes the 18 parking spaces facing south, just south of the church that we'll redevelop. That will accommodate 59 full parking spaces, which per communication with the board, with the city attorney, with the building commissioner, 58 rather are required. So we have all private parking on site as a worst case scenario. The second page, you'll note kind of what we're going through and what I just mentioned. We have the use of all the buildings. We have the square footage of all the buildings. We have the parking spaces required for all the buildings. And we can, again, accommodate all parking privately on site if necessary, but that's obviously not what we're here to achieve. So curious to the board's opinions, but we are here to seek the formal approval of 12 parking spaces being waived as a variance for a full redevelopment of the St. Mary's Church.
And if I may, Evan, you at one point, I know the board had talked to you, and I think you had sent me something basically that you have spoken to the other landowner that would have also a potential overflow if for some reason it were necessary. Nothing formalized per se, but you've at least approached him and received favorable comment in return.
Yes, that's correct. So, Mr. Steve Adam owns an acre and change, just east of the subject, just west of the subject property. We approached this gentleman and had a formal arrangement put together. We've put pen to paper for overflow parking if and when it's necessary. Per the site plan, it's not, and it won't be to achieve what we need to do here. But on the off chance, again, per market studies we've shown, per people we've talked to, there's a lot of interest in hosting events at this site. So on the off chance there is a larger event, that's something we can certainly pursue. But again, not something that will be required per code as it sits.
And so, and I bring that up to the board's attention because I know that the board did make those comments, and that was something, and I wanted the board to be aware that Mr. Manship did, in addition to clearly putting together a different plan, he did also have that as kind of a backup if the board was inclined to grant the 12 space variance so that they could have the greater green space, he also has a backup plan that doesn't involve those 18 spaces, so that, so he's got a bit of a belt and suspenders, I believe, and I wanted the board to be aware of that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing too. And there's a reason you're not hearing from me until here it is October from the April here. Steve's a tricky guy to pin down. So between him hopping between Florida and here, we finally got a chance to connect over the last several months and have something that makes sense, again, as a doomsday scenario. So should there be the variance granted and there is a large event that gets hosted, selfishly, I think we've checked all the boxes.
If I can ask a question here, Evan. So you're now going to demolish the school, and is that where you're planning on putting the additional parking spaces?
We're not planning on putting any additional parking spaces. The site plan you see, the one that you've been given, is a doomsday scenario. In this scenario, again, the one that everyone has access to, and I've left additional copies for the record, per the site plan, there will be no parking variance required. This accommodates 100% of the parking spaces needed per city code. The reason I'm here is to... Say it again, Sarah.
Is that with the school building torn down?
Yeah, Sarah,
Correct.
I think the difference between what he's presented today and what he emailed earlier was the green space, correct? Didn't you email us something that didn't have the 18 spaces in the green space?
Maybe
Right.
I don't want to get everybody convoluted, so perhaps that's what I've done. The email that I sent to you, which is this one right here, the back page of the second page of what I've given everyone, demonstrates exactly what our plans were, which is exactly that. You demolish the school. Yeah, sure. Ron, would you mind handing this gentleman one as well?
I'm sorry, I guess I didn't get that plan.
I'll take one too.
Correct. So the email, you guys are seeing the email I sent to Sarah. This plan right here, Sarah, is just if the variance, if for some reason is not to be granted, this is what the project will look like. This will be where the 18 spaces will go. This is where it'll belong, in part where that school will stand, partially in where the school currently stands. If that answers your question.
So Evan, and Ron, I'm going to include you in this too, please. With the 59 spaces that you have listed here, does that meet our requirement for square footage of what buildings will be left?
I believe, Sarah, that it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I have one other question. So are you purchasing the rectory? I didn't catch what you said right at the very beginning when you came up.
No, there's no purchasing of the rectory whatsoever. It's strictly the church and strictly the education building, which on the email, which you guys can see on the back, totals 8,834 square feet, and that's been confirmed by the commissioner and other folks within the city.
Yeah, I can say, and Ron can obviously correct me or Sarah could, but based on, and again, part of the issue is we don't have event center listed in our ordinance.
I understand
But
that,
based on what we've previously looked at and said,
Right.
yes, I think this fits into that category. If they had the 59 spaces, that meets the variance, or that meets the ordinance. They don't need your permission at all to do
Right.
that. I think the permission that they're asking for here is for to have a reduction of 12 spaces so that they can have more green space than what's listed on this particular plan. And that would not meet your ordinance.
Right.
I don't want to misspeak.
No, you're nailing it, and
But you've got 18 spaces here.
and Phil, thanks for jumping
Yeah.
in. So the 18 spaces you see here, in the initial plan, there's 6 spaces slated to be parallel with the building. So 18 minus the 6 that were slated on the initial plan are 12, which is the variance we're asking for.
Right, so I think and it may have been the one I've seen, but this was just straight across. There wasn't 18 spaces there, there was like 6.
Correct. So 18 less the
So
6.
you
and the-
should have more than 59 then, right? With,
No, the 18s will get you to 59.
18, 9, 12, and 5, and then the 13 on the back line.
Correct. So if you sit there and if you total them up, you'll have 75. That's noted here, less the 16 that are public spaces, which aren't included. So 75 less 16 is 59.
Right, and that's where you get because I think the public are yeah, so just so I can make sure I understand everything, because I know we've done this a few times. What you're asking for is you are asking this body for a variance from the parking requirement to allow you to have how many spaces?
47.
47.
Correct.
Okay, there you go.
A reduction of 12 spaces from the plan you're looking at.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let me make sure that I'm clear, sorry. So, as I'm looking at this now, the 18 spaces along the green space, you're wanting that to be reduced?
By 12.
Is that what?
Yeah, I think he wants those 18 to be reduced by 12.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know where they'll go in theory. I mean, we can put together another plan like that, but the way we had it set up initially is we had 6 spaces to run parallel with the building, the church. So it doesn't matter where they go. I guess that's up to the board, wherever you guys would like to see them. We can put the 6 parallel, and that's your spot right there. Or we
Evan,
can-
regardless of whether it's 6 or 18 here, the building has to be demoed to achieve that.
Correct. And the building, that's based on the feedback we had from the board in the first get. The school is just convoluting everything, and frankly, it's in the most dire condition.
Sure.
So we decided it makes the most sense to scrape that, keep the fire marshal happy, keep everyone happy on, the less convoluted we can make this project, the best. Convoluted project, convoluted owner, or convoluted, probably the most confusing site in Decatur County.
So if you're gonna demo this structure, then, I guess to me, that's gonna be, I mean, you're gonna have asphalt through there anyway, so.
That's correct.
I guess I just don't see the difference in if you're gonna demo that, then what's 6 versus just going ahead and finish that line out.
I'm not sure how you mean, could you ask me a different way?
Well, as far as the parking spaces go, if this is gonna come back as asphalt to have 6 spaces along through there, is there a different configuration that you have in mind for achieving 6 with not demoing the building, or?
That's probably a question that's above my pay grade. That's a designer question. I can't speak to it intelligently, unfortunately. That's something that we'll happily put in front of you, but
So you don't necessarily know where you're going to put the 6 spaces, right?
so there are deltas 12, so if we were to have 6 spaces, no. I mean, ideally, we'd tuck them as far back away from everything as possible.
Right. I think and again, please don't let me
No,
speak
please.
for you, but
Please.
I suspect that what they're trying to achieve is to have this nice open green space without any cars parked in between there across from their event center. And then find another place on this site plan to put 6 additional spaces.
Yeah, and I might be showing my cards a little too much, but one of the designers had the idea to keep as much of the front facade of the school as possible while just completely erasing the back end of the square footage. So just to keep the brick arch, if you want to call it that, with the school, just to give it some aesthetic from the street. But again, there's going to be nothing there, no square footage, no building, no nothing. But the last thing I want to have happen is some big cool brick facade and then a car parked right next to it, you know what I mean?
Right.
So if we can get the 12 space reduction in parking requirements to push the parking to the back, that's what we're seeking.
Yeah. So I think realistically, that's what they're trying to do, is put the 6 spaces somewhere else so that they can have something cool to go take pictures in front of.
Yeah.
Okay, so another question I have, So if we took those 18 spaces out, that only leaves 41 spaces. If I'm adding correctly and seeing everything on this correctly.
But
Correct.
you add
Yeah.
6 in somewhere else.
Yeah, and so the last plan, Sarah, the one that was voted down from the board, had 6 spaces that were parked parallel
Correct.
with the church. So
Correct.
18 less 6 is a reduction of 12.
Correct. So we need 58 spaces are required.
Correct. Less 12.
And when we're talking about 58, that goes with the square footage of just the church and the
Education building.
And
education
the
building.
education center, correct.
Okay.
Well, and I will say, from my legal analysis, the last time we looked at this, the school really was the issue, because the school had so much square footage that it made it so that you needed like 130, 140 some spaces. So if the school is gone, then that's no longer part of the analysis, then you're really just looking at the others. And
Correct, but we based our numbers based on event size and vehicle occupancy formulas.
Yeah.
In that regard, it didn't have anything to do with the school per se.
correct, yeah, I mean,
Because I think before with the school, it was actually 285 parking spaces that would be required. And, yes, at the last meeting, we were basing that on the size of the events, how many people per vehicle, average, that kind of thing. I mean, and this is just my opinion, do I feel that 58 spaces is enough for an event for 200 to 250 people? No. But if he can satisfy the ordinance with the 58 spaces, that's all we can ask for.
Well, and then I guess that's my claim is, we've got a handful of different people that have said 58 is the magic number. So while we've gone above and beyond to identify additional parking for overflow events, just as we were asked, we can satisfy that right now with this plan. So again, if there's no variance that is granted for the 12 reduced spaces, this is the plan that we'll proceed with.
Why couldn't you move all 18 of those spaces over the other side of where that building was?
We talked about that. That's a great question too. There's a sidewalk that runs along McKee Street, which is on the corner right there. So we'd have to vacate the sidewalk, which is just another headache. So in an effort to keep everyone's smile on their face, I chose to have them face south.
Is there anyone else from the audience who would like to speak on this matter?
Yes, sir.
Please come forward and state your name and address, if you don't mind.
Maris Berditis, I'm here on behalf of the 4 homeowners.
I apologize, sir. Can you please spell your name?
Yeah, Maris,
Okay.
Pried,
B-R.
Ieditis.
Thank you, sir.
I'm here on behalf of the 4 homeowners that live between the railroad and McKee Street. I see 16 angled parking spaces here. I live with my mom just south of the alley. South of the alley, there are 7 parking spaces with a place for a fire hydrant. North of the alley, there are 10 parking spaces. Little past history, if I can give it here. I've lived there with my mom for quite a while when the church was still functioning. And I would leave and come back, and people would park in front of the fire hydrant. They would park in the alley on the street, blocking the alley. They would park on our property back by the garage. And I can see where that's probably going to happen again if they're parking along East Street. My request is that 2 residential parking signs be assigned to each property along the street. That's all I'm asking. I'd like 2 parking spaces per household is not too much to ask. That's all my request is. Seems fair to me.
It's on East Street, sir.
Yes, between Railroad and McKee. I live in a house just south of the alley. And you wouldn't believe, this was during church services, Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sundays, weddings. That street would be full. Those parking spaces would be full. That's where I'm requesting 2 residential parking signs per household. Pretty simple, I think.
Does this body have the authority to do
I
that?
don't think you do.
Have that authority.
I was gonna say, I don't think you do. I think they can I think you can certainly take that request into your consideration of what you're offering, but I don't think that you can require the Manships to do that, and I think that would probably be
That still
a
falls on
council
the city.
question. Yeah.
Public street.
I was gonna say, if it's public street parking, I don't know that you can reserve it for a house.
We can regulate it by time, we can prohibit it, but it's uniform.
Yeah. It has to be the same as all the other residential public streets. So I appreciate what you're asking for, sir. I'm just not entirely sure it's some, I know it's not something that this body can do. Now, whether or not it's something that the city or the council could do, I think is an excellent question for the engineer and I to explore. And